A 4-year-old beggar girl signals for help to a millionaire at the grocery store. The millionaire saw it and followed her, then discovered something that shocked everyone. Comment what you think will happen and subscribe to my channel to support my work. The grocery store's AC created an artificial breeze that contrasted with the scorching afternoon heat. Arthur Sterling pushed his shopping cart between the crowded aisles. His mind split between the shopping list for the week and the numbers that wouldn't leave his head. Sales from his chain of hardware stores had dropped again last quarter. At 52, he had built a solid empire, but the obsession with controlling every detail of the business consumed him in a way that few around him understood. The sensation came first, a gentle pressure against his right arm. When he looked down, he found a small, dirty hand with fingernails bitten to the quick, carefully touching the fabric of his dress shirt. The child couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Her dark brown hair was disheveled, and her clothes, a faded pink t-shirt and ripped denim shorts, hung loosely on her thin body. But it was her eyes that paralyzed him. Large, almond-shaped, loaded with a disturbing intensity for such a small child. Lily, although he didn't yet know her name, stared at him with an expression that mixed urgency and despair. Without making any sound, she brought her small hand to her own mouth, then pointed at him, repeating the gesture twice with a precision that suggested practice. Arthur looked around, searching for the girl's guardians. The supermarket was swarming with families doing their Saturday shopping, but no one seemed to notice the silent child who had appeared out of nowhere. He crouched down, getting to her eye level. "Where are your parents, sweetie?" he asked, keeping his voice low and gentle. The answer came in the form of more gestures. Lily pointed towards the exit of the establishment, then at him again, shaking her head negatively when he mentioned her parents. Her movements were elaborate, almost like her own language that she had developed out of necessity. Distrust, that constant companion that had settled in his chest since the family betrayals that marked him, whispered warnings in his mind. It could be a scam, a trap, some kind of strategy to extort money from a well-dressed man. But there was something in the girl's desperate posture, in the way her small eyes filled with tears when he hesitated, that activated a part of himself that Arthur tried to keep buried. Lily took a few steps towards the exit, then stopped and looked back, making sure he was following her. The gesture was simultaneously childlike and terribly adult, as if she were used to guiding people or making sure she wouldn't be abandoned. "Hold on," Arthur murmured, abandoning his shopping cart in the middle of the aisle. "Where do you want to take me?" She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, she grabbed the hem of his shirt with one hand and pointed insistently towards the street. There was an almost magnetic quality to her determination, as if her life depended on making him understand something urgent. The heat hit them as soon as they left the air-conditioned environment. Lily let go of his shirt and began to walk with quick steps, constantly looking over her shoulder to make sure he was keeping up. Her cheap plastic sandals made a muffled sound against the hot asphalt, and Arthur noticed that one of them was almost falling apart. They crossed 2 blocks, passing a bakery where the smell of fresh bread mixed with the aroma of fuel from passing cars. Lily carefully avoided the oil puddles and potholes in the uneven sidewalk, moving with the agility of someone who knew those streets well. The change of scenery was gradual but noticeable. The commercial buildings gave way to simple houses, then to more precarious constructions. The asphalt turned into uneven cobblestones, and the traffic decreased considerably. Arthur felt the stares of the locals on him. His dress clothes and leather shoes immediately marked him as a stranger in that environment. Lily finally stopped in front of a small auto repair shop, with 2 bays covered by a corrugated tile awning. The sound of tools and male voices echoed from the interior, mixed with the noise of a radio playing country music. She walked around the main building, following a narrow passage between 2 exposed brick walls. In the back of the workshop, almost hidden by a row of empty oil drums, was a small shack. The improvised construction had plywood walls and a tin roof that gleamed under the strong sun. A colourful curtain replaced the front door, swaying slightly in the warm afternoon breeze. Lily turned to him one last time, her big eyes conveying a mixture of gratitude and anxiety. Then, before he could react, she disappeared through the curtain, leaving him alone in the small dirt yard, wondering what exactly he had just agreed to. Arthur remained still for a few seconds, absorbing the environment around him. The tiny yard was surrounded by low, peeling brick walls, and the dirt floor showed signs of attempted gardening. Some cracked pots with withered plants and an improvised flower bed where herbs grew that he couldn't identify. The smell of burnt oil from the workshop mixed with the aroma of food being prepared somewhere nearby. From inside the shack came muffled voices, a female, tense, and another very small one that he presumed was Lily's. Although he couldn't distinguish the words, the tone of the conversation suggested urgency and concern. "Excuse me?" he called, approaching the curtain. "Is anyone there? The girl brought me here?" The silence that followed was tense. Then the curtain opened abruptly, revealing a young woman with distrustful brown eyes. Bethany had black hair tied in a messy ponytail and wore a stained apron over a simple blouse. Her hands, rough from work, held firmly to the edge of the curtain, as if it were her only protection against the outside world. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice full of suspicion. "Who are you?" "My name is Arthur Sterling. Your daughter?" He hesitated, not sure of the relationship between them. "Brought me here. She seemed to need something." "Lily isn't my daughter," Bethany replied quickly, defensively. "She's my niece. And she shouldn't be bothering strangers." Her words came out rushed, as if she had rehearsed this explanation many times. Behind her, Arthur could see part of the inside of the shack. It was small and clean, with simple but well-cared-for furniture. A low table was covered with papers and crayons scattered about, and on the plywood walls there were children's drawings taped. They all seemed to be on the same theme, houses with windows, always using intense shades of red. "She didn't bother me," he said, trying to sound reassuring, "but she seemed to be trying to tell me something important. Are you in need of any help?" The question made Bethany stiffen even more. She took a step outside, closing the curtain behind her, clearly not wanting him to see more of the interior. "We don't need anything, thank you. You can leave now." She crossed her arms over her chest, but Arthur noticed that her hands were trembling slightly. "Look, I know it must seem strange," he continued, keeping a respectful distance. "A man you don't know showing up here, but the girl, Lily, she really seemed desperate for something." "Lily has trouble speaking," Bethany admitted reluctantly. "Sometimes she interprets things differently. It wasn't anything personal against you." At that moment, the curtain moved again, and Lily appeared next to Bethany. The girl looked at Arthur with an expression of relief, as if she feared he had left. She made some quick gestures to Bethany, pointing to Arthur and then to her own belly. "She's hungry," Bethany translated, her face flushing with embarrassment. "Sometimes she asks strangers for help when things are difficult here at home." The admission seemed to cost her a lot. Arthur realized that she was struggling between pride and need, a battle he knew well from his own complicated childhood. "I can help," he offered simply. "It's not charity, it's just a helping hand." "We don't know you," Bethany repeated, but her voice had lost some of its initial hostility. "How do we know you're not some kind of predator?" The question was fair, and Arthur respected her caution. He took out his wallet and showed his ID. "Arthur Sterling, owner of the Constramax chain. My stores are spread across the region. You can check if you want." He put the wallet away slowly. "I grew up in a place like this. I know what it's like when things get tough." Bethany studied his face for a long moment. Lily, meanwhile, had approached him again and was examining his shirt with childlike curiosity, as if she had never seen such fine fabric. "Why would you do this?" Bethany asked finally. "Help people you don't know?" It was a question that Arthur wasn't prepared to answer completely. His compulsion to help came from dark places in his memory, nights without food, the feeling of abandonment, the promise he had made to himself that he would do differently if he had the opportunity. "Because sometimes we need each other," he said simply. Lily made more gestures, this time more elaborate. She pointed to Arthur, then to her own mouth, and finally to Bethany. Her little hands moved with a fluidity that suggested a complex language developed out of necessity. "She wants to know if you can buy food for the three of us," Bethany translated, her voice almost inaudible. She said you looked like a good person." The comment hit Arthur unexpectedly. It had been years since someone had described him as a good person. In his business world, he was known as fair but ruthless, someone who didn't tolerate incompetence or dishonesty. "Of course," he replied, looking into Lily's almond-shaped eyes. "We can go to the market together. You can choose what you want." It was then that he noticed something disturbing. When he mentioned going out together, a shadow of panic passed over Bethany's face. She looked quickly around, as if expecting to see someone watching, and then pulled Lily closer to herself. "We can't go out," she said quickly. "It's better if you buy it and bring it here. If it's not too much trouble." "Why can't you go out?" Arthur asked, but immediately realized that he had crossed a line. Bethany's face closed again, and she shook her head. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." Lily, sensing the growing tension, made a reassuring gesture to Bethany, passing her small hand on the woman's arm. Then she looked at Arthur with an expression that seemed to apologize for her caretaker's reaction. "It's okay," Arthur said, deciding not to push further. "I'll get some things and come back. You stay here." As he turned to leave, he heard Lily make a low sound, not exactly a word, but something like an urgent whisper. He turned and saw that she was pointing to her drawings on the wall, visible through the ajar curtain. They all showed the same obsessive image, a house with a broken window, always painted in intense red. Arthur left the small yard with the image of Lily's drawings etched in his mind. The intense red of the broken window seemed to pulse in his memory, awakening an uneasiness that he couldn't name. During the walk back to the supermarket, he tried to rationalize what he had seen. Children draw strange things all the time. It didn't necessarily mean something sinister. But the obsession with the same theme, the precision with which Lily reproduced that specific house, and especially the red color always on the broken window, that wasn't random. In the supermarket, he filled 2 bags with basic items: rice, beans, oil, sugar, powdered milk, some fruits and cookies. He also added drawing materials, more crayons, paper, colored pencils. Maybe through art, Lily could communicate what she couldn't express with words. The return to the shack was different. This time Arthur noticed details that had gone unnoticed on the first visit. Some houses on the street had bars on the windows. Others seemed abandoned. There was an atmosphere of tension in the air, as if the residents were used to protecting themselves from something. When he arrived at the yard, he found Bethany sitting on a low stool, watching Lily play in the dirt with some twigs. The girl had created a kind of rudimentary model, sticks arranged in the shape of a house, with a small hole where the window should be. "I brought some things," he announced, putting the bags on the ground. Bethany stood up quickly, as if she had been caught doing something she shouldn't. "You didn't need to buy so much," she murmured, but her eyes lit up when she saw the amount of food. Lily dropped her twigs and ran to the bags, her big eyes examining the contents with the natural curiosity of a child. When she saw the drawing materials, she clapped silently, a genuine smile illuminating her face for the first time. "She likes to draw," Bethany explained, her voice softer now. "It's one of the few things that calms her down." I see that, Arthur replied, watching Lily carefully organize the colored pencils in order of hue. How long hasn't she spoken? The question made Bethany hesitate. She looked at Lily, then at her own hands. Since she came here with me, it's been about 6 months. And before that? I don't know much about before. The answer came low, loaded with a tension that Arthur was beginning to recognize. Bethany was lying, or at least omitting important parts of the truth. Lily, apparently oblivious to the adult's conversation, had started a new drawing. Arthur approached to observe, and his stomach clenched. It was the same house, the same broken window, but this time she was adding human figures, small shapes that seemed to be running. "Lily," he called gently, "this house, have you been there?" The girl stopped drawing and looked at him with an expression that mixed confusion and fear. She shook her head vigorously, but then made complicated gestures that Arthur couldn't interpret. "She says she doesn't want to talk about it," Bethany translated quickly. "Please don't push it." But there was something in the way Bethany spoke, a rush to end the subject that increased Arthur's suspicions. He decided to try a different approach. "Bethany, can I ask you a personal question?" He sat down on the ground, getting to their level. "Are you too afraid of something?" The young woman swallowed hard. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you act like people who are hiding. Lily seems to have experienced something traumatic. You don't want to leave the house, and there's a tension here that, well, I recognize it because I felt it before." Bethany was silent for a long moment, watching Lily continue her drawing. The girl had added more details, a larger figure near the house, arms outstretched as if she was screaming. "Have you ever been married?" Bethany asked abruptly. The change of subject caught Arthur by surprise. "No." "Why?" "Just curious. You seem like the kind of man who would have a family, a big house, an organized life." "I've had opportunities," he admitted, "but I've never trusted anyone enough to completely share my life. I've had complicated experiences with family when I was younger." "Complicated experiences like what?" Arthur hesitated. He didn't talk about it often, but there was something in Bethany's timid vulnerability that made him want to be honest. "My parents abandoned me when I was 8 years old. They left me with an uncle who only wanted the welfare check he received for taking care of me. When I turned 15 and the check stopped, he kicked me out. I learned early on that I can't completely trust people. But even so, you're here," Bethany observed, "helping 2 strangers. Sometimes we do things that we can't explain rationally." He looked at Lily, who was now coloring one of the human figures red. "That girl reminds me of myself at her age, the way she looks at the world, as if she expects something bad to happen at any moment." Bethany followed his gaze. "Lily has been through hard things, harder than a child should go through. What happened to her?" This time, Bethany didn't immediately shy away from the subject. She seemed to struggle internally with the decision to share information. When I found her, she was alone, lost. I don't remember exactly where, but she was very scared, dirty, hungry. She didn't speak, she just cried." The words came out hesitantly, as if they were carefully selected. "I thought it was temporary, that someone would come looking for her. But no one came." "Didn't you contact the authorities?" The panic that crossed Bethany's eyes was instantaneous. It's complicated. Lily became so attached to me, and I to her. I thought it would be better, that she was safe here." Arthur realized that there was more to this story, much more. But he also noticed that pressing too hard could make Bethany close up completely. "And work? How do you support yourselves?" "I work as a cleaner in some offices and houses in the area. It's not much, but it's enough to get by." She paused, then added, "At least it was. Lately it's been hard to get new jobs." "Why?" Bethany looked nervously around before answering. "There's a man, my ex, Ozzy. He knows about Lily, and sometimes shows up here making threats, spreading stories about me to my employers. He says if I don't give him money, he'll tell everyone that—" That I'm hiding a child. The final piece of the puzzle began to fit into Arthur's mind. He's blackmailing you. It's more complicated than that, Bethany whispered, looking at Lily to make sure she wasn't listening. Ozzy knows things about how Lily came to me. Things that could get me into serious trouble. Bethany's words hung in the warm afternoon air, loaded with a weight that made Arthur realize he had gotten involved in something much more complex than he had initially imagined. The silence was broken by the sound of glass shattering coming from the auto repair shop. Someone had dropped a bottle on the concrete floor. Lily's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The girl dropped the crayons. Her eyes widened in pure panic, and she began to tremble violently. Without making any sound, she curled up into a fetal position, covering her head with her small arms. "Lily, it's okay," Bethany said quickly, kneeling next to the girl. "It was just a bottle. No one is going to hurt you." But Lily continued to tremble, her breathing rapid and shallow. Arthur watched, disturbed, how such a small child could have such an intense reaction of terror to a seemingly harmless sound. "This happens whenever she hears glass breaking," Bethany explained, running her hand affectionately through Lily's hair. "Or any sudden loud noise. It takes a few minutes for her to calm down." "What happened to her?" Arthur asked, his voice low and urgent. "Bethany, for God's sake, this child has been severely traumatized. You need to tell me the truth." Bethany continued to stroke Lily, her own eyes filling with tears. "I wish I could tell you everything, but it's dangerous. For her, for me, for anyone who gets involved." More dangerous than leaving a traumatized child without adequate help? The question hit Bethany hard. She looked at Lily, who was slowly beginning to relax, and then at Arthur. "You don't understand. Ozzy isn't just a violent ex. He knows people. People who do terrible things to children who disappear, and he knows exactly where Lily came from." Arthur's stomach turned. "You're saying that—" "I'm saying that when I found Lily, she was running away from something much worse than you can imagine. And Ozzy was there. He saw everything." Bethany lowered her voice even further. "He helped me get her out of that situation, but now he uses it against me." Lily had stopped trembling and was looking at the two adults with an expression that mixed fear and understanding. It was as if she knew they were talking about her past, even without understanding all the words. "Where did you find her?" Arthur pressed. "In a house where children where they did horrible things to them." Bethany's voice was almost inaudible now. "Lily managed to escape during a fight between the adults. There was broken glass everywhere, a lot of noise, violence. That's when Ozzy and I saw her running down the street alone, in the middle of the night." The image of Lily's obsessive drawings snapped into Arthur's mind with painful clarity. The house with the broken window, always in red. She wasn't just drawing memories. She was reliving the trauma constantly. "And you brought her here instead of taking her to the authorities," he said, trying not to sound accusatory. "Ozzy said it would be worse, that the people who controlled that house had contacts in various places, including the authorities. That Lily would never be safe if they knew where she was." Bethany wiped the tears with the back of her hand. "I believed him. I wanted to protect her. But now Ozzy is using it against you. He says if I don't pay what he asks, he'll tell those people where Lily is, that they'll come get her." Bethany's voice broke. "I don't have any money. I've lost most of my jobs because of the stories he spreads, and I don't know what to do anymore." Arthur felt the familiar fury rising in his chest, the same anger he felt when he saw injustices, when stronger people took advantage of the weak. But this time, there was something more. Looking at Lily, who had returned to drawing but now made nervous and uncontrolled strokes, he felt a fierce protection that he hadn't experienced in years. "When was the last time Ozzy came here?" 3 days ago. He said he'd be back at the end of the week if I didn't get the money." Bethany looked at the sky, calculating. "That is, tomorrow or the day after." "How much does he want?" $500. For him, it's little. For me," she made a gesture of despair, Arthur took out his wallet without hesitation. "Here's $500, but that's not going to solve the long-term problem." Bethany looked at the money as if it were a mirage. "I can't accept this. It was already too generous with the food." "Yes, you can, because it's not just about money." Arthur put the wallet away. "Ozzy will be back asking for more. Blackmailers always come back asking for more. We need to find a permanent solution." "How? I can't go to the police. I can't leave here with Lily. I can't." "You can trust me." The words came out with a conviction that surprised Arthur himself. "I have resources, contacts, experience in solving complex problems, but I need you to be completely honest with me from now on." Lily, who had stopped drawing, approached Arthur and touched his hand. When he looked down, she was offering him her latest drawing. This time, in addition to the house with the broken window, there was a new figure, a tall man in a suit, extending his hand to a small child. "She likes you," Bethany observed, surprised. "Lily doesn't usually trust men. Since she came here, she only tolerates my presence. Maybe she recognizes someone who was also afraid as a child," Arthur murmured, accepting the drawing. At that moment, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the side of the workshop. Bethany stiffened immediately, and Lily dropped everything she was doing, running to hide behind Bethany. "He shouldn't be here today," Bethany whispered, the panic evident in her voice. "Who?" "Ozzy." A male voice, rough and authoritative, shouted from the front yard. "Bethany, I know you're there. Some fancy rich guy showed up around here asking questions about you. I think we better talk." Arthur felt all his muscles tense. "He knows I'm here. In neighborhoods like this, everyone knows everything in a matter of hours," Bethany replied, trembling. "What are we going to do?" Lily made desperate gestures, pointing to the back of the yard where there was a narrow passage between two walls. It was obvious that she had an escape plan prepared, further evidence that she lived constantly on alert. "Bethany!" Ozzy's voice was closer now. "Don't make me come back there. You know I don't like to be ignored." Arthur made a quick decision. "Listen, you two are going to leave through that passage that Lily is showing. I'm going to talk to this man." "You don't understand," Bethany protested. "Ozzy is dangerous. He's not just a common blackmailer." "And I'm not just a common businessman," Arthur replied, his voice loaded with a hardness that he rarely used outside the business environment. "Go. Now." Ozzy's footsteps were getting closer, and Lily was insistently pulling on the hem of Bethany's clothes towards the escape route. Bethany hesitated for only a second before taking Lily by the hand and running towards the narrow passage between the walls. The girl moved with the agility of someone who had used that escape route before, her small feet barely touching the dirt floor. Arthur waited until he heard the sound of them disappearing into the alley before positioning himself next to the entrance curtain. Ozzy appeared in the yard like a storm, a man of medium height, but with broad shoulders and muscular arms covered in tattoos. His hair was disheveled, his beard unshaven, and there was a tension in his movements that suggested violence was always just below the surface. When he saw Arthur, he stopped abruptly. "You must be the rich guy who's been asking about our Bethany," said Ozzy, his voice loaded with sarcasm and threat. "Nice suit. Must have cost more than most people here make in a month." "Ozzy, I presume," Arthur replied, keeping his voice calm and neutral. "Bethany told me about you." "Told you, did she?" Ozzy laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "And what exactly did she tell you? That I'm a bad man who bothers her and the girl? She told me you're blackmailing her." The direct statement caught Ozzy by surprise. He had expected denials, lies, the kind of verbal dance that frightened people usually did. Arthur's brutal honesty destabilized him momentarily. "Blackmail is a strong word, buddy," Ozzy recovered, taking a few steps towards Arthur. "I'd say it's more of a business agreement. Bethany has something that other people are very interested in knowing. I keep my mouth shut. She pays me for discretion. And what exactly does she have that would be so valuable?" Ozzy smiled, and the smile was even more disturbing than his anger. A girl who shouldn't exist, a girl that certain people have spent a lot of money looking for in the last 6 months. Arthur's blood ran cold, but he kept his expression neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, pretending to be the Good Samaritan. Ozzy moved closer. Let me explain how things work around here, Doc. You may have money, you may have expensive suits, you may have imported cars, but here in my territory, I'm the boss. Your territory? Every street, every alley, every backyard shack. Nothing happens here without me knowing, and nothing happens without my permission. Ozzy stopped less than a yard from Arthur, including fancy rich guys showing up to play hero. Arthur smelled the alcohol on Ozzy's breath and realized that the man wasn't just threatening, he was drunk. That made him more dangerous and less predictable. What do you want? Arthur asked directly. Now we're talking the same language. Ozzy relaxed slightly. I want you to get out of here and never come back. Bethany and the girl are my responsibility, and if I don't want to leave, Ozzy's smile widened, revealing teeth yellowed by cigarettes, then you're going to find out that rich people aren't immortal, especially when they show up alone in places where nobody's going to look for them. The threat was clear, but Arthur had faced intimidation before. During his years building his business empire, he had dealt with corrupt suppliers, dishonest competitors, and all kinds of people who thought violence was the solution to business problems. Ozzy, I'm going to make a counter-offer, Arthur said, taking out his wallet again. Here's $1,000. You take this money, get out of Bethany and Lily's lives forever, and everyone's happy. Ozzy looked at the money but didn't make a move to take it. $1,000, huh? You think their problem is solved with $1,000? I thought it was about money. It was. But now it's about respect. Ozzy pushed Arthur's hand away. You show up here like you own the world, thinking you can solve everything with money. But you forget that some things can't be bought. Like what? Information, protection, silence. Ozzy began to circle around Arthur like a predator assessing its prey. Do you know how many people have died looking for that girl? Do you know the kind of people who are after her? The revelation made Arthur completely reconsider the situation. What kind of people? The kind that don't take no for an answer. The kind that consider children as products, valuable merchandise. Ozzy stopped walking and stared directly at Arthur. Lily escaped from a scheme that moved a lot of money. A lot. And now you, with your good intention of a rich boy, may have put her and Bethany in mortal danger. How so? Because you're too obvious. Expensive car, expensive clothes, asking questions. In a few hours, everyone in this neighborhood will know that a rich businessman is interested in the lost girl. And some of those, everyone work for the wrong people. Arthur felt the weight of truth in Ozzy's words. His presence, which he thought was helping, might have exposed Lily to exactly the people she was running from. What do you suggest, then? That you disappear, today, now, and take your good intentions far away from here. Ozzy crossed his arms. Leave things as they were. Bethany pays me. I keep everyone away from them. Everyone stays alive. And if I don't do that, then I'll have to take steps to protect my interests. Ozzy took a cell phone out of his pocket. One call from me, and by tomorrow morning, certain people will know exactly where to find what they've been looking for 6 months. It was a clear ultimatum. Arthur realized that he had completely underestimated the complexity of the situation. It wasn't just about blackmail or domestic violence. He was dealing with something much bigger and more dangerous. I need time to think, Arthur said. Time is a luxury, Doc. You have until noon tomorrow. If I see you around here after that, or I find out that you tried to take Bethany and the girls somewhere else, I'll make that call. Ozzy put the cell phone away. And then, not all your money will be able to protect them from what's going to happen. Ozzy turned to leave, but stopped at the entrance to the yard. Oh, and Doc, don't try to be clever by hiring security or something like that. The people I'm dealing with aren't impressed by hired goons. They solve problems in a definitive way." With that, he disappeared, leaving Arthur alone in the silent yard. The businessman stood still for several minutes, processing everything he had heard. The situation was much worse than he had imagined. Lily wasn't just a traumatized child who needed help. She was a fugitive from extremely dangerous people, and his presence had potentially put them all in mortal danger. The soft sound of careful footsteps made him turn around. Bethany and Lily were returning through the passage, their expressions showing that they had heard at least part of the conversation. Lily ran to him and made urgent gestures, pointing in the direction Ozzy had left, and then making a movement that clearly meant danger. "She wants to know if you're going to abandon us now," Bethany translated, her voice trembling. "Lily has been through this before. People who promise to help, but run when they find out how complicated the situation really is." Arthur looked into Lily's almond-shaped eyes and saw there a silent plea, but also a premature resignation that broke his heart. That child had already learned not to expect much from adults. Night fell on the small shack like a heavy blanket. Arthur had insisted on staying, ignoring Bethany's protests about the danger his presence represented. Lily, exhausted by the stress of the day, had fallen asleep on a thin mattress on the floor, her fingers still clutching one of the crayons he had brought. "You need to leave," Bethany whispered for the 10th time, sitting in a plastic chair next to the low table. "Ozzy wasn't kidding. If he finds out you stayed here—" "Let me worry about Ozzy," Arthur replied, watching Lily's restless sleep. Even sleeping, the girl fidgeted uneasily, mumbling unintelligible sounds. "Tell me more about how she came to you, the whole truth this time." Bethany was silent for a long moment, her nervous hands playing with the hem of her apron. Finally, she sighed deeply. "Ozzy and we were different back then. He hadn't gotten involved with the right people to make easy money yet. We worked together in a cleaning company, cleaning offices overnight." She paused, remembering. "One night, we were cleaning a commercial building downtown when we heard strange noises coming from one of the upper floors." "What kind of noises?" "Screaming, children crying, men talking loudly, arguing about money." Bethany trembled slightly. "Ozzy said to ignore it, that it wasn't our business, but I couldn't. So I went up to see what was happening." Arthur leaned forward, paying attention to every word. "And what did you see?" "An apartment that had been transformed into something horrible. Young children of various ages, some didn't even seem to be more than 3 years old, all thin, scared, silent." Bethany's voice broke. "And men paying to do things with them." Arthur's stomach turned. Lily was there. She was, huddled in a corner, trying to hide behind a broken piece of furniture. She was the smallest of them all, and she was hurt. She had marks on her body, bruises. Bethany wiped away the tears that had begun to flow. "When she saw me, she made the same gesture she made to you at the supermarket, pointed to her mouth, then to me, asking for help. How did you get her out of there?" "We didn't plan it. There was an argument going on between the men, something about payments. Suddenly, a bad fight broke out. Someone threw a bottle against the wall. Glass flew everywhere." Bethany looked at Lily sleeping. "The children panicked, started running. Lily ran straight to me. And you took her. Ozzy said I was crazy, that we were going to get into trouble, but I couldn't leave her there. I picked her up and we ran. No one followed us because they were too busy with the fight." Bethany paused. "Only later did we find out that cleaning company that hired us was a front. We were employees of people connected to the scheme. Ozzy found that out talking to other employees. That's why he's so afraid of these people. And that's why he's been blackmailing me since day one. He said if I didn't pay him to keep quiet, he'd tell the bosses that one of the merchandise was with me." Bethany covered her face with her hands. "I tried to seek official help in the beginning. I went to 2 different police stations, and In the first, the officer said that I had no evidence, that they were just unfounded accusations. In the second, the policeman who attended to me asked strange questions. He wanted to know exactly where I was living, if anyone else knew about Lily, if I had told other people. Bethany trembled. I left there with the feeling that he wasn't trying to help. He was collecting information. The revelation confirmed Arthur's worst fears about the extent of the corruption involved. If the scheme had people infiltrated in the authorities, Lily really wouldn't be safe through official channels. That's why you only work as a freelance cleaner now. I'm afraid to formally employ myself anywhere, afraid they'll find out where I am. Bethany looked around the small shack. This place belongs to an old man who rents it to me without a contract, just on trust. I pay in cash, I don't leave traces. Arthur processed all the information. The situation was even more complex than Ozzy had suggested. Lily wasn't just a child running from dangerous people. She was an eyewitness to heinous crimes, involving a network that apparently had reach both in organized crime and in the authorities. Bethany, I need to ask you something difficult, he said carefully. Are you sure Ozzy is really protecting you, or could he be using the situation to profit from both sides? The question made Bethany very quiet. What do you mean? I mean that maybe he's not just blackmailing you. Maybe he's selling information about Lily to these people, controlling when and how they're going to find her. That doesn't make sense. If he wanted to turn Lily in, he would have done it months ago. Unless she's more valuable as a bargaining chip in the long run. Think about it. He gets money from you regularly, and he probably gets money from those other people to keep them informed about where Lily is, but without turning her in completely. The possibility made Bethany's eyes widen in horror. You think he's prolonging this on purpose? I think Ozzy isn't the protector he pretends to be. At that moment, Lily woke up suddenly, her small body straightening like a spring. Her eyes were wide, focused on something that only she could see. She began to make frantic gestures, pointing to the wall where her drawings were. What is it, sweetie? Bethany knelt next to her. Lily ran to her drawings and grabbed the red crayon. With urgent movements, she began to draw over the house she had already made, adding new figures. This time, there were several people around the house, dark, threatening figures. She dreamed about them, Bethany murmured. Sometimes she has nightmares about that night. But Lily wasn't finished. She continued drawing, adding a figure that stood out from the others, taller, with something in its hands that looked like a telephone. When she finished, she pointed insistently to the drawing, then to the direction where Ozzy had disappeared earlier. She's trying to tell us something about Ozzy, Arthur realized. Lily nodded vigorously, then made elaborate gestures that not even Bethany could completely interpret. Frustrated by not being able to communicate clearly, the girl took another piece of paper and started a new drawing. This showed two figures, a woman and a child, being taken away by several dark figures, while the tall figure with the telephone watched. The meaning became clear to the two adults at the same time. Lily was trying to warn them that Ozzy was planning to turn them in, that he might have already made the contact he had threatened to make. We need to get out of here, Bethany said, the panic evident in her voice. Now! Where to? Arthur asked, but he was already getting up. I don't know. Somewhere far from here. Lily ran to a small box hidden under the mattress and took out an old doll, clutching it to her chest. It was clearly her most precious object, something she had managed to keep throughout the ordeal. Is there something inside that doll? Arthur asked, noticing how Lily was protecting it. Bethany looked surprised. How do you know? The way she's holding it, like it's more than just a toy. Lily hesitated, then carefully offered the doll to Arthur. When he took it, he noticed that it was heavier than it should be. There was definitely something hidden inside. Lily, can I see what's in here? He asked, gently. The girl nodded, but her eyes showed extreme anxiety. It was obvious that, whatever was hidden in the doll, it was something of crucial importance to her. Arthur carefully examined the doll and found a small opening in the back, closed with hand-sewn stitches. "Bethany, do you have a small pair of scissors?" Bethany brought a small pair of sewing scissors, her hands trembling as she handed them to Arthur. Lily watched every movement with an intensity that bordered on despair, as if her life depended on the care with which he treated her doll. "I'll be very careful," Arthur promised, gently cutting the stitches. "We'll find out together what you were keeping." When the opening was large enough, he carefully inserted his fingers and felt something that wasn't filling. Papers. Small and folded multiple times, but definitely documents of some kind. Lily made urgent gestures, indicating that he should hurry. Her small eyes were constantly turning towards the entrance to the shack, as if she expected someone to appear at any moment. The first paper that Arthur removed was a birth certificate. The name was blurred by moisture and time, but he managed to read Lily Olson, born 4 years ago in Tulsa. The parents' names were illegible, but there was an official stamp that seemed authentic. "Olson," he murmured. "Lily, is that your real name?" The girl nodded, then made gestures indicating that there was more in the doll. Arthur continued removing papers. There was a vaccination card, some documents that appeared to be medical reports, and something that made his blood run cold. It was a photo, small, crumpled, but clearly showing Lily in an environment completely different from the horror that Bethany had described. In the photo, she was smiling, wearing a clean dress, next to a young woman with blonde hair and a dark-haired man. Everyone looked happy, like a normal family. "Bethany, look at this," he called, showing her the photo. Bethany approached and examined the image. "I've never seen this photo before. Lily never showed me." "These must be her real parents," Arthur said, studying the faces. "But then, how did she end up in that horrible place?" Lily took the photo from his hands and kissed it gently, tears streaming down her small face. Then she made complicated gestures that included car movements, people fighting, and something that seemed to represent separation. "She's trying to say she was separated from them," Bethany interpreted. "But I can't understand how." Arthur continued examining the remaining documents. There was a paper different from the others. Not official, but handwritten in feminine handwriting. He managed to read some words. "If something happens to me, protect my daughter," and an address in Tulsa. "Lily, did your mother write this?" he asked, showing the paper. The girl nodded vigorously, then pointed to the photo and made gestures that indicated longing. "She loves her parents," Bethany said, her voice full of emotion. "She never showed that before because she didn't think she could trust anyone with that information." Arthur stood up, carefully putting the documents in the inside pocket of his jacket. "We need to go to Tulsa, to that address. If Lily's parents are still alive, if they're still looking for her." "What if it's a trap?" Bethany interrupted. "What if Ozzy finds out we left? What if those dangerous people are watching her family?" "Then we'll face that when it happens. But we can't keep living in hiding forever." Arthur looked at Lily, who was reorganizing her drawings, clearly preparing for a trip. "Look at her, Bethany. That child has real parents who have probably been desperate for 6 months. A sudden sound from outside made everyone freeze. Footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps approaching the shack. Lily immediately dropped everything and ran towards the escape passage, but stopped when she realized that this time the footsteps were coming from several directions. "They've surrounded the place," Bethany whispered, the terror evident in her voice. A familiar voice echoed from the front yard. Ozzy, but this time he wasn't alone. "Bethany, I know you're in there. And I know the rich guy is still with you." Arthur positioned himself between Lily and the entrance, his brain working quickly to find a solution. The shack had only one exit, the front curtain, and the side passage was apparently blocked. "We're not going to hurt anyone," Ozzy continued, his false voice of tranquility being more terrifying than his previous threats. "We just want to talk. to resolve this situation in a civilized manner. Civilized, a different, rougher voice added with sarcasm, like it should have been from the beginning. Lily was trembling violently, but not from fear this time. It was anger, pure anger from a child who had been betrayed by adults many times before. She grabbed one of the red pencils and began to draw furiously on the wall. Not the house with the broken window, but figures of people being hurt. "Lily, stop!" Bethany tried, but the girl didn't stop. She continued drawing, each stroke more violent than the previous one. "Look, folks," Ozzy called again. "Let's make things easy. The rich guy comes out first with his hands where we can see them. Then Bethany, the girl, stays last." "Never," Arthur murmured. "What was that?" the rough voice shouted. "I said never," Arthur shouted back. "If you want something, you're going to have to come in here and get it." The silence that followed was tense. Then laughter. Several men laughing as if they had heard an excellent joke. "Doc," Ozzy said, his voice now loaded with a real threat. "You don't understand the situation. We're not just some street thugs, we're professionals. And we have professional equipment." To prove his point, a metallic sound echoed from outside, clearly a gun being cocked. Lily stopped drawing abruptly and turned to Arthur. Her big eyes didn't show fear now, but determination. She made quick gestures, pointing to under the mattress where she had kept her doll. "What is she trying to say?" Arthur asked. Bethany bent down and looked under the mattress. "There's a hole here, a hole in the floor." It was true. There was a small opening in the plywood floor, large enough for a small child to pass through, but too tight for an adult. "Lily, did you dig this?" Arthur asked, impressed. The girl nodded, then pointed down and made gestures that indicated a tunnel or underground passage. "Is that where it goes?" Bethany asked. Lily pointed in the direction opposite to the front yard. Apparently the tunnel led under the auto repair shop, possibly exiting on the other side of the block. "She can escape," Arthur realized. "But we don't fit in there." "Guys," Ozzy called again, "you have 30 seconds to leave voluntarily. After that, we're coming in our way." Lily picked up her doll, now without the documents, and offered it to Arthur. When he tried to refuse, she insisted, making gestures that clearly meant that he should keep it. "She wants you to keep the doll," Bethany translated, as if it were a promise that she will find you later. "Lily, no," Arthur said, kneeling to her level. "We're going to get out of this together, somehow." But the girl was already heading towards the hole. She turned around one last time, made a gesture that clearly meant "thank you," and then pointed to the address he had kept in his pocket. The message was clear. She trusted him to find her real parents. 15 seconds, Ozzy shouted. Lily disappeared into the hole with the agility of someone who had practiced this escape many times. The sound of earth being moved came from under the floor, becoming increasingly distant. 10 seconds, Arthur looked at Bethany. "When they come in, you let me talk first. Whatever I say, agree. What are you going to do?" Something I should have done from the beginning. The front curtain was brutally torn, and 3 men entered the small space of the shack. Ozzy in front, followed by 2 others that Arthur didn't recognize, both younger, more muscular, and clearly armed. The 3 men stopped abruptly when they realized that the shack was empty of children. Ozzy looked around, his expression changing from arrogant confidence to confusion, then to fury. "Where's the girl?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "What girl?" Arthur replied, keeping his voice calm despite his heart beating erratically. One of the younger men, with visible scars on his face and arms covered in tattoos, took a threatening step towards Arthur. "Don't play with us, playboy. We know she was here." "She was," Arthur admitted, "but she left an hour ago when Ozzy showed up making threats for the first time today. Bethany got scared and sent the child away." "Where to?" Ozzy pressed, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "How am I supposed to know? I'm a stranger here." Arthur shrugged. "Bethany mentioned something about an aunt in another neighborhood, but she didn't say where." Ozzy turned to Bethany, who was leaning against the wall, trembling visibly. "Bethany, where did you send the girl?" She, Bethany stammered, clearly terrified. "She doesn't need to say anything," Arthur interrupted, placing himself between Ozzy and Bethany. "In fact, you all can leave now. There's nothing here for you." The second unknown man laughed humorlessly. "I don't think you understand the situation, rich guy. We didn't come here to pay a social visit." "I understand perfectly," Arthur replied. "You're criminals looking for a child for deplorable purposes, and you think you can intimidate innocent people to get what you want." The brutal honesty of his words caught the three men off guard. They had expected denials, lies, the kind of fear that would facilitate intimidation. But Arthur's direct approach destabilized them. "Criminals," Ozzy repeated, his voice full of sarcasm. "We're businessmen, Doc. We provide specialized services for clients with specific needs. Call it what you want. We all know what you do with children." The scarred man drew a gun, pointing it directly at Arthur. "Maybe you need some incentive to be more cooperative." "Put that away," Arthur said, surprising everyone with his calmness. "Do you know why I'm not afraid of your gun?" "Because you're crazy," the second man suggested. "Because I'm Arthur Sterling, owner of the Construmax chain. I have contracts with half of the public agencies in this region. My disappearance or injury would be investigated by people you don't want as enemies." He paused, letting the information sink in. "Besides, there are approximately 15 people who know exactly where I am now." It was a complete lie, but said with such conviction that it made the three men exchange uncertain glances. "He's bluffing," Ozzy said, but his voice didn't sound as sure as before. "Try me and you'll find out." Arthur crossed his arms. "Or you can accept a business proposal that will be much more profitable for everyone." "What kind of proposal?" the scarred man asked, lowering the gun slightly. "How much do you make per month with your current activities?" Ozzy hesitated. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I can offer legitimate work that pays better, security at my stores, collection services for my company, even administrative positions for those with adequate skills." Arthur studied them carefully. "You seem like intelligent men. You must know that what you do now has no long-term future." "You're trying to reform us?" the second man asked, incredulous. "I'm trying to offer an alternative that doesn't involve spending the rest of your life running from the law or competing with other criminals for territory." Arthur kept his voice firm. "And that doesn't involve hurting innocent children." For a moment, there was silence in the small shack. Ozzy looked at his companions, clearly calculating options. The scarred man still held the gun pointed, but his posture had relaxed slightly. "And if we refuse your generous offer," Ozzy asked finally, "then you continue to be criminals, looking for a child who is no longer here, while I use all my resources and contacts to ensure that you are found and prosecuted." "You have no proof of anything," the second man protested. "I don't need proof to hire private investigators, offer rewards for information, and make your lives extremely difficult in this region." Arthur smiled coldly. "Money buys a lot, including information about who you are, where you live, who your families are." The implicit threat made the scarred man wield the gun again. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm offering choices. You can accept legitimate jobs and a better life, or you can continue to be targets." Arthur was not intimidated by the gun. "But one thing won't happen. You won't find that child. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." "Where is she?" Ozzy pressed one last time. "Far from here. Safe. Being cared for by people who won't allow her to be hurt again." It was technically true. Lily was far away in the tunnel she had dug, presumably safe for now, but Arthur knew that it was only a temporary solution. Ozzy and the other two men looked at each other again, clearly silently discussing what to do. Finally, Ozzy made a gesture, and the others lowered their weapons. "Your proposal," he said carefully. "How much are you talking about?" Starting salary of $3,000 per month for each, with the possibility of an increase based on performance, work from Monday to Friday, weekends off, health benefits after 3 months. The eyes of the 3 men widened. It was more than any of them earned with criminal activities and without the constant risks. And in return? The scarred man asked. You disappear from these women's lives. Never look for that child again. And if anyone comes asking about her, you know nothing. And our current employers. That's your problem to solve. But I suggest you do it quickly and discreetly. Ozzy considered the proposal for several long minutes. I need to talk to my associates. I can't decide this alone. You have 24 hours, Arthur replied. After that, the offer expires and you go back to being my enemies. The 3 men left the shack without another word, leaving Arthur and Bethany alone in the tense silence. Bethany collapsed into a chair, trembling with relief and exhaustion. Do you think they'll accept? She asked. I don't know, but I bought us time. Arthur looked at the hole in the floor through which Lily had escaped. We need to find her and leave the city tonight. Where to? Tulsa. To the address that was in her doll. Bethany stood up, gathering some clothes into a small bag. What if her parents are dead? What if it's a trap? Then we'll improvise. But we can't stay here. Arthur checked his watch. Lily is smart. She'll probably wait until it's completely dark before coming out of the tunnel. We need to be ready to meet her. How are we going to know where the tunnel ends? We'll find out. Arthur took out his wallet and counted the money that was left. Do you know anyone who can lend us a car without asking questions? Maybe. There's a neighbor who owes me a favor. Bethany hesitated. But Arthur, what if you're wrong about Ozzy? What if he comes back with more men or worse? Then we'll have to be long gone before that happens. They spent the next hour preparing silently, packing only the essentials and trying not to make noise that could attract attention. Arthur carefully kept Lily's documents and her doll, knowing that they would be crucial to finding her real family. When the sun finally set completely, they carefully left the shack and began to search for the exit of Lily's tunnel, hoping that the brave girl had managed to stay safe during the hours of waiting. The search for Lily turned out to be more difficult than Arthur had imagined. The tunnel she had dug apparently stretched for a considerable distance under the block, and finding their way out in the dark of night proved nearly impossible. Bethany had managed to borrow an old Volkswagen Beetle from her neighbor, old Tony, a retired mechanic who didn't ask questions when she explained that they needed to travel urgently. The car was parked 2 blocks away from the shack, hidden behind an abandoned auto shop. She could have come out anywhere within a 3-block radius, Bethany muttered as they walked silently through the dark streets. Lily knows these alleys better than anyone. Arthur held a small flashlight, keeping the light low to avoid unwanted attention. Every shadow seemed to hide potential threats, and every sound made them freeze in alert. She's smart, he said, trying to convince both Bethany and himself. She'll wait until she's sure it's safe. It was the small footprints in the soft dirt beside a fence that led them to her. Tiny marks from plastic sandals, heading towards a vacant lot behind a closed bakery. Arthur pointed the flashlight down, following the footprints until they found a small hole partially hidden by tall grass. Lily? Bethany called softly. It's us. You're safe now. There was no immediate response. Then a subtle movement in the vegetation, and Lily's almond-shaped eyes appeared cautiously. She was covered in dirt, her hair tangled, but visibly relieved to see them. The girl emerged from the hole like a small, wild animal, constantly looking around before running to Bethany. When she saw Arthur holding her doll, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. We didn't have time to sew her back together, Arthur apologized, handing over the toy, but I saved everything that was inside. Lily hugged the doll against her chest, then made urgent gestures in the opposite direction from where they had come. It was clear that she wanted to get away from there as quickly as possible. The car's this way, Bethany said, taking Lily's small hand. Let's get you to a safe place. During the walk to the car, Arthur noticed that Lily was limping slightly. "Did you hurt yourself in the tunnel?" The girl shook her head, then pointed to her left knee and made gestures indicating that she had scratched it on the stones during her escape. "We'll take care of it when we get to Tulsa," Bethany promised. In the car, Lily sat in the back seat, clutching her doll, watching out the rear window as if expecting to be followed. Arthur drove carefully through the back streets, avoiding the main avenues where they could be more easily tracked. "How long until Tulsa?" Bethany asked. "An hour and a half, maybe 2 at this speed," Arthur replied. "I want to make sure we're not being followed before we get on the highway." They drove around the outskirts of the city for almost 40 minutes, making random turns and doubling back on their tracks several times. Finally, convinced that they were alone, Arthur headed towards the entrance to the I-44. It was during the drive on the highway that Lily finally relaxed enough to start communicating more actively. She leaned forward and showed Arthur the address that he had memorized from the paper found in the doll. "Do you know this place?" he asked. Lily nodded vigorously, then made gestures that clearly represented happiness. Arms open, smile, movement suggesting hugs. "She's excited to get there," Bethany interpreted. "It must be where she was happy before everything went wrong." "What do you think happened?" Arthur asked. "How does a child go from a loving family to that horrible place?" "I don't know. Maybe they were in an accident and someone took advantage of the situation." Bethany looked at Lily in the rearview mirror. "Or maybe she was kidnapped." The word kidnapped made Lily stop her gestures immediately. She became very quiet, then started drawing on the fogged-up window. It was difficult to see clearly in the dark, but it seemed to be the same house with the broken window. "Lily," Arthur said gently, "can you try to show us what happened? How did you leave home and end up in that bad place?" The girl hesitated, then began a series of complex gestures. She pointed to herself, then made movements suggesting she was playing. Next, she gestured as if someone was picking her up, carrying her, putting her somewhere closed. "Someone took her," Bethany realized. "Someone grabbed her while she was playing." Lily nodded sadly, then continued the gestures. She showed several people, arguments, and finally came to the movement that represented the escape. Running, hiding, running more. "How many children were in that place?" Arthur asked. Lily showed her fingers several times, indicating a large number, more than 10 certainly, maybe 20 or more. "My God," Bethany murmured. "It was a big operation, very big." "And it's still running," Arthur reminded. "That's why Ozzy and the others are so desperate to find Lily. She's not just a witness, she's living proof that the operation exists." They entered Tulsa shortly after midnight. The city was quiet, with only a few gas stations and drugstores still open. Arthur followed the GPS directions until they reached the neighborhood mentioned in the address, a middle-class residential area with well-maintained houses and tree-lined streets. The number they were looking for corresponded to a 2-story house, painted light blue, with a small garden in the front. There was a light on in the living room, and Arthur could see a television on through the window. "Someone's awake," he observed. Lily was practically glued to the car window, her big eyes fixed on the house. She made urgent gestures, clearly wanting to get out of the car and run to the door. "Wait, sweetie," Bethany said. "We need to make sure it's safe." But Lily could no longer contain herself. She opened the car door before anyone could stop her and ran towards the gate of the house. Her plastic sandals made a soft sound on the pavement, and she didn't hesitate for a second before starting to knock on the front door. "Lily!" Bethany whispered urgently, getting out of the car. "Get back here!" But it was too late. The door of the house opened, revealing a blonde woman wearing a bathrobe. The woman looked down, saw Lily, and the world seemed to stop. "Lily," the woman whispered, as if she were seeing a ghost. The girl didn't respond with words, but her gestures were unmistakable. She extended her small arms towards the woman, her eyes shining with tears of joy. The woman knelt down immediately, taking Lily in her arms and hugging her with an intensity that spoke of months of despair and lost hope. "My baby," she cried. "My little one, where have you been? We've looked everywhere for you." Arthur and Bethany approached cautiously. The scene was both beautiful and moving, but they knew there were still dangers to consider. "Ma'am," Arthur called gently, "we need to talk about where Lily has been and about the people who may still be looking for her." The woman looked up, noticing for the first time that there were other people there. You brought my daughter back." "It's a long story," Bethany replied, "and complicated. Can we come in? There are things you need to know to keep Lily safe." At that moment, a male voice echoed from inside the house. "Marina, what's going on? Who's out there at this hour?" "Carlos!" Marina cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "Carlos, come here, quickly!" Heavy footsteps approached the door, and a dark-haired man appeared, the same man from the photo that Lily had kept in the doll. When he saw his daughter in his wife's arms, his legs faltered. "Lily," he murmured, joining the family embrace. "Our little Lily is home." The living room of the Santos's house was filled with an atmosphere charged with conflicting emotions. Marina held Lily in her lap as if fearing that the girl would disappear again, while Carlos couldn't stop gently touching his daughter's hair, as if needing to physically confirm that she was really there. "6 months, Marina murmured, tears streaming freely down her face. 6 months without knowing if you were alive, if you were being taken care of, if we would ever see you again." Lily had snuggled completely against her mother, but her eyes continued to move nervously around the room, checking all possible exits. Even in the comfort of her mother's arms, she maintained the state of alert that she had developed during the months of terror. "How did she disappear?" Bethany asked delicately, trying to understand the whole story. Carlos wiped away his own tears and sat closer to the reunited family. "Lily was playing in the backyard of my sister's house, where we used to leave her when we needed to work. It was a Saturday morning, I remember perfectly. Marina was at the hospital for some routine tests, and I had gone to pick up supplies for a job at home. My sister-in-law, Swaley, said she went out to hang clothes on the clothesline in the back for no more than 10 minutes, Marina continued. When she came back, Lily had disappeared. The front gate was open, but she would never leave alone. She's always been an obedient child. We called the police immediately, Carlos said, his voice filled with frustration. But they said we needed to wait 24 hours before officially reporting the disappearance. When we finally reported it, the officer who attended us, there was something strange about the way he asked the questions. Strange how? Arthur asked, already suspecting the answer. He wanted to know about our work schedules, about how much money we earned, if Lily had any behavioral problems, Marina explained. He didn't seem interested in looking for her, but in assessing whether we were good parents. And after that? Bethany pressed. Nothing, Carlos said bitterly. Literally nothing. We handed out flyers, offered a reward, appeared on local television shows, spoke with journalists, but we never received a single clue about where she might be. Lily had begun to make gestures to her parents, apparently trying to tell her own version of the story. Marina and Carlos watched attentively, but it was obvious that they couldn't interpret the complex language that their daughter had developed. She didn't talk like that before, Marina observed, worried. Lily has always been a very talkative child. Why isn't she talking now? Trauma, Bethany explained gently. What she experienced was very difficult. Maybe it's too difficult for her to find words to explain. Arthur decided it was time to reveal the whole truth. Marina, Carlos, you need to know where Lily has been these 6 months, and you need to understand that she's not completely safe yet. The two parents exchanged glances, clearly fearing what they were about to hear. She was being held in a place where children were exploited, Arthur said carefully, trying to be honest without being too graphic. An organized operation that involves powerful and dangerous people. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Marina sobbing. Carlos clenched his fists, his jaw tight with contained anger. "Who did this to our daughter?" he asked, his voice low and controlled in a way that was more terrifying than shouting. "We don't know all the names," Bethany replied, "but we know it's an organized group, that they have contacts in the authorities, and that they are actively looking for Lily." "Why are they looking for her?" Marina asked. "Because she escaped," Arthur explained, "and because she saw things that could destroy their entire operation if they get to the right people." Lily had stopped making gestures and was watching the adults' conversation with intense attention. It was as if she knew they were discussing important things about her safety. "What are we going to do?" Carlos asked. "I can't lose my daughter again, not after having her back." "First, you can't contact the police about her return," Arthur said firmly. "At least not yet. There's evidence that people involved in the operation have infiltration in various institutions." "Then how are we going to protect her?" Marina asked, hugging Lily tighter. "Change," Bethany said. "You can't stay here. This house, this address, all of this is known. If these people find out that Lily has come home—" "But our life is here," Carlos protested. "My job, our friends, our family." "Your life won't mean anything if these people find you," Arthur said harshly. "These aren't people who make empty threats." Lily made sudden and urgent gestures pointing to the front window of the house. Everyone turned to see what had caught her attention. A dark car was parked across the street, with two figures visible in the front seat. "How long has that car been there?" Arthur asked, keeping his voice low. "I don't know," Carlos replied, carefully moving to a position where he could see better. "It wasn't there when you arrived." "They followed us," Bethany murmured, the panic evident in her voice. Lily began to tremble again, her eyes filling with the same terror that they had seen when the glass broke in the shack. She made frantic gestures, clearly indicating that they needed to flee immediately. "She's right," Arthur said, making a quick decision. "We need to get out of here now, all of us." "Where to?" Marina asked, already getting up with Lily in her arms. "Far away from here, very far away." Carlos ran to the bedroom and returned with a small suitcase. "Important documents. Money we had saved. Some clothes," he explained quickly. "Marina, just grab the essentials for Lily," Arthur instructed. "Clothes, medicine if she takes any, maybe a toy or two besides the doll." While Marina ran to her daughter's room, Arthur watched the car in the street. The two figures were still there, but one of them had gotten out of the vehicle and was talking on the phone. "They're communicating our location to other people," he realized. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before more cars arrive." "How are we going to get out of here without being seen?" Carlos asked. Bethany pointed to the back of the house. "Is there a back door?" "Yeah, it leads to a small yard. On the other side of the fence is the neighbor's house." "Is the neighbor trustworthy?" "Mrs. Eulalia has lived there for 20 years. She took care of Lily several times when she was younger," Carlos explained. Marina came running back with a small backpack. Lily had clung to her doll and a small teddy bear that was apparently another comforting object from her childhood. "Let's go," Arthur said, directing everyone towards the back of the house. "Carlos, do you know this neighborhood well? Do you know how to get to our car without using the front street?" "I can try. There's a path through the backyards that leads to the street behind." They quietly slipped out the back door, Carlos leading the way through the dark yard. The fence was low, easy to climb, and Mrs. Eulalia was apparently asleep. Her house was completely dark. Lily didn't protest when Carlos picked her up to make it easier to get over the fences, but Arthur could see that she was constantly assessing every shadow, every noise, every possible escape route. Her 4-year-old mind had been forced to develop survival instincts that no child should possess. It took them 15 minutes to reach the beetle through the neighbors' yards. Throughout the journey, they could hear distant sounds of more cars arriving on the street where the Santos house was located. "They brought reinforcements," Bethany observed when they finally reached the car. "And now they've discovered we're not there anymore," Arthur said, starting the engine as quietly as possible. "We have a small head start, but it won't last long." As they drove away from Tulsa through the back streets, Lily snuggled between her parents in the back seat, finally allowing herself to relax minimally for the first time in hours. But everyone knew that this was just the first step of a journey that would be much longer and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The drive through the back roads of Oklahoma stretched into the early morning. Arthur drove with extreme caution, avoiding main highways and stopping only at isolated gas stations for fuel. In the back seat, Marina quietly hummed lullabies that Lily recognized, causing the girl to gradually relax in her arms. "Where are we going?" Carlos asked for the third time. "Away from anywhere they can easily find us," Arthur replied, constantly checking the rearview mirror. "I know a place in Missouri, a small town where I have a reliable contact. We can hide there while we decide on the next step." Bethany, who had been quiet for most of the trip, finally spoke up. "Arthur, I need to tell you something. About Ozzy and those people." "What?" "When we were hiding near the shack, I overheard part of their conversation after you left. Ozzy mentioned a deadline. He said his bosses were getting impatient and that if he didn't deliver Lily in a week, they would solve the problem differently." "What kind of differently?" Marina asked, instinctively hugging her daughter tighter. "He didn't specify, but from his tone, I think they're planning to eliminate all the witnesses, including Lily." The silence in the car became heavy. Carlos clenched his fists, his breathing becoming faster and more irregular. "They want to kill my daughter." "We're not going to let that happen," Arthur said firmly, "but we need to be smart. These people have resources, contacts, experience in making people disappear." Lily had stopped humming with Marina and was watching the adults' conversation with concerned attention. She made some quick gestures, pointing to herself and then making a movement that clearly represented hiding. "She wants to know if she needs to hide again," Marina translated, tears in her eyes. "My baby thinks it's her fault that we're in danger." "It's not your fault, sweetie," Carlos said, kissing Lily's forehead. "You were very brave, braver than any adult I know." Dawn found them entering a small town in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri. Arthur drove to a simple motel on the outskirts, the kind of place that didn't ask too many questions about guests who arrived early and paid in cash. "2 rooms," he asked the sleepy receptionist, "just for a few nights." The man wrote down false information that Arthur provided and handed over 2 keys without showing any interest in his new guests. The rooms were small, but clean. Marina laid Lily on one of the beds and watched her daughter sleep, as if fearing that she would disappear again if she took her eyes off her. "She looks so small," Marina murmured. "So fragile." "How did she survive all this alone?" "She wasn't alone," Bethany reminded. "There were other children there. Maybe they helped each other." "The other children," Carlos said suddenly. "What happened to them when Lily escaped?" The question made everyone quiet. No one had thought about the other victims who were still trapped in the same operation from which Lily had fled. "We can't save them all," Arthur said, but his voice didn't sound convincing even to himself. "We can try," Bethany replied, "if we can get enough evidence, if we find the right people in the authorities." "Bethany, these people kill witnesses. We're not going to be able to help anyone if we're dead." The discussion was interrupted when Lily woke up from her sudden nap, her eyes widening in panic. She looked around the unfamiliar room, clearly confused about where she was. "It's okay, my love," Marina reassured her immediately. "Mommy's here. Daddy's here." "You're safe." Lily calmed down upon hearing her mother's voice, but continued to look nervously at the windows and the door of the room. She gestured that she wanted to see what was outside. Carlos took her to the window, holding her carefully. The view showed only green fields and distant mountains, no sign of cars or threatening people. "See? It's a beautiful and peaceful place," he said. "No one will find us here." But Lily didn't seem convinced. She pointed to the room door and gestured clearly, asking if it was locked. "Yes, sweetie, it's locked," Marina confirmed. "And Daddy's watching. No one will come in without our permission." Throughout the rest of the day, they took turns watching the windows and discussing options in hushed tones while Lily played with her limited toys. The girl had started drawing again, but this time her drawings were different. Instead of the house with the broken window, she drew the family, 4 figures holding hands, surrounded by mountains and trees. "She's feeling safer," Marina observed, seeing the drawings. "The nightmares still bother her at night, but during the day she's going back to being a child." "How long can we stay here?" Carlos asked Arthur. "Not long, a week, maybe 2 if we're careful. But eventually we're going to need a permanent solution." "Like what?" "New identities. New place to live, jobs that don't leave a trace." Arthur looked at the reunited family. "Basically, you're going to have to disappear from your old life." The reality of the situation finally hit Carlos completely. "We're never going to be able to go home again. We're never going to see our family, our friends." "It's the price of Lily's safety," Arthur said softly. "The question is, are you willing to pay that price?" Marina looked at her daughter, who was falling asleep in her arms after a whole day without constant terror. "For her well-being, we would do anything." That night, while the Santos family tried to sleep peacefully, for the first time in 6 months, Arthur and Bethany took turns standing guard. It was during these silent hours that the reality of the situation became clearer. They had saved Lily, but the war was far from over. On the 3rd day at the motel, everything changed. Arthur woke up to the insistent sound of his cell phone ringing at 5 in the morning. It was an unknown number, but something in his gut made him answer. "Hello? Mr. Sterling?" The voice was female, young, and filled with urgency. "My name is Dr. Amanda Rice. I'm a prosecutor with the Missouri Attorney General's office. I need to speak with you about a very serious case." Arthur's heart raced. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important right now. What matters is that we know you're with a child named Lily and that you're all in mortal danger." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mr. Sterling, in the last 48 hours, 3 people have been found executed in St. Louis. All of them had a connection to Lily's case. One of them was Ozzy Santos." The name made Arthur freeze. "What?" "Ozzy was found in a vacant lot with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The other 2 were his accomplices, those men who were with him when you met." The prosecutor paused. "Whoever is controlling this operation has decided to eliminate loose ends." Arthur got out of bed, walking to the window to check for any suspicious movement outside. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you and this family are on the list of people who need to be silenced. And because we need Lily's testimony to build a solid case against the true masterminds. Lily is a traumatized 4-year-old. She doesn't even speak. There are specialized techniques for collecting testimony from child victims of trauma. We have forensic psychologists trained specifically for this." The prosecutor paused. "Mr. Sterling, this may be our only chance to completely dismantle this network. If we lose this opportunity, other children will continue to be victims," Arthur completed. "Exactly." Arthur looked out the window again, and this time saw something that made his blood run cold. A dark car was parked on the access road to the motel, and 2 figures were getting out of it. "Dr. Amanda, they're here." "What?" "2 men just arrived. We have to go now." "Listen carefully," the prosecutor said quickly. "There's a police operation on its way to your location, but it will still take 15 minutes to arrive. You need to hide or escape until then." Arthur knocked on the door of the next room. "Carlos! Marina! Wake up now! We have to go!" The Santos family awoke immediately, the survival instincts they had developed in recent days making them react quickly. Lily woke up quietly, her eyes immediately moving to assess the level of danger in the situation. "What's happening?" Marina asked, already grabbing the backpack with the essential belongings. "They found us," Bethany said, looking out the window and seeing the men approaching the motel reception. "Is there a back exit?" Arthur asked. "Yes, but it leads directly to a smaller road," Carlos replied. "If they brought more than one car—" "We're going to find out," Arthur said, putting the phone in his pocket but keeping the call active. "Dr. Amanda, are you still there?" "I am. The operation is approaching. 15 minutes. It may be too late." They quietly slipped out the back door of the motel. The morning was cold and foggy, which offered some natural cover. Lily walked between her parents, holding firmly to each of their hands, her senses alert to any danger. The sound of loud voices came from the reception. The men were questioning the clerk about the guests. Apparently they weren't being gentle in their questions. "This way," Carlos whispered, indicating a trail that led to the dense woods behind the motel. They moved as quietly as possible, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to completely avoid noise. Lily, accustomed to moving silently, naturally took the lead of the group, choosing the best paths instinctively. "She's amazing," Marina murmured, watching how her daughter safely navigated the woods. 10 minutes later, they reached a small clearing from where they could see the motel through the trees. 2 men were coming out of the rooms, clearly frustrated that they hadn't found anyone. "Dr. Amanda," Arthur whispered into the phone, "they searched the rooms and didn't find us. We're hiding in the woods behind the motel." "Perfect. The operation will arrive in 5 minutes. Stay where you are." That's when they heard the sound that changed everything. Barking dogs. The men had brought tracker dogs to find them. "They have dogs," Bethany said, the panic evident in her voice. Lily immediately understood the gravity of the situation. She made urgent gestures, pointing to up in the trees and then to a small stream that ran near the clearing. "She wants us to climb the trees or get into the water," Marina interpreted. "The water will mask our scent," Arthur realized. "Lily, you're a genius." They moved quickly to the stream. The water was freezing and reached up to the adults' knees, but it was their best chance to confuse the dogs. Lily didn't hesitate to enter the water despite the cold. The barking was getting closer when they finally heard the sound they had been waiting for, police sirens arriving at the motel. "The operation has arrived," Dr. Amanda said over the phone. "Stay where you are. We're going to neutralize the threat." During the next few minutes, they heard sounds of confrontation coming from the direction of the motel. Loud voices, orders being given, and then gunshots. Lily cowered against Marina, but didn't go into full panic mode as she had before. Finally, everything went quiet. "Dr. Amanda," Arthur called on the phone. "Still here, situation under control. We apprehended the 2 men and the dogs. You can come out of hiding." When they emerged from the woods, they found the motel surrounded by police cars. A young woman in a suit approached them, clearly Dr. Amanda Rice. "Mr. Sterling, Santos family," she said, extending her hand. "I'm sorry you had to go through this, but you're safe now." "For how long?" Carlos asked, still holding Lily protectively. "That depends," Dr. Amanda replied, crouching down to Lily's height. "Sweetheart, you're very brave. And now we can use your courage to help other children who are going through the same thing you went through." Lily looked at the prosecutor for a long moment, then made gestures clearly asking if she could trust that woman. "She wants to know if you're one of the good guys," Marina translated. "I'm one of the people who fight against the bad guys," Dr. Amanda replied. "And with your help, we can stop them forever." For the first time in months, Lily smiled. A small but genuine smile, and she made a gesture that everyone understood. She was ready to fight. The process of collecting Lily's testimony was unlike anything Arthur had imagined. Dr. Amanda had arranged a special room at the Attorney General's office, decorated as a welcoming, child-friendly environment with toys, books, and a low table, perfect for drawing. "We're not going to pressure her to talk," explained Dr. Carla Mendonça, the specialized forensic psychologist. "We'll let her communicate in whatever way she feels comfortable. If it's gestures and drawings, we'll work with that." Marina and Carlos were present. but maintained a respectful distance so as not to influence the process. Bethany was also there, as Lily had developed a bond of trust with her during her months in captivity. Lily, Dr. Carla began softly. Can you show us, through your drawings, where you were before you met Aunt Bethany? The girl hesitated, looking at her parents for encouragement. When Marina nodded gently, Lily picked up a red crayon and began to draw. The first drawing was the familiar house, the same obsessive house with the broken window, but this time she added details that she hadn't shown before: numbers on the front, cars parked around it, and multiple small figures in the windows. Is that the house where you were? Dr. Carla asked. Lily nodded, then picked up a black pencil and began to draw larger figures, adults with menacing expressions. With precise movements, she illustrated actions that made all the adults present shudder. How many adults were in that house? Dr. Amanda asked carefully. Lily showed her fingers repeatedly, first 5, then another 5, then another 3. 13 adults directly involved in the operation. And how many other children? This time, Lily needed to use her fingers several times, counting carefully. The final number was terrifying. More than 20 children were being held at that location. Dr. Carla took detailed notes of each gesture and drawing. Lily, can you remember where that house was located? What kind of place was around it? The girl began a new drawing, showing the house surrounded by tall buildings, cars, and what appeared to be a busy avenue. She also drew something that looked like a bridge or overpass nearby. Urban center, Dr. Amanda observed. Probably St. Louis. Lily nodded vigorously, then pointed in a specific direction and made gestures that indicated movement. Cars passing, people walking. Near a busy commercial area, Bethany interpreted. She's trying to say that there was a lot of people moving around during the day. That makes sense, Dr. Amanda said. They would hide the operation in plain sight. No one would suspect criminal activity in such a busy area. The process continued for 2 hours. Lily drew internal layouts of the house, showed daily routines of the children, and identified through elaborate gestures the adults who seemed to be in charge of the operation. The most revealing drawing came when Dr. Carla asked about how she had escaped. Lily created a detailed sequence: a fight between adults, glass breaking, children running in panic, and her finding an open window on the ground floor during the confusion. Did other children try to escape with you? Marina asked, her voice filled with emotion. Lily made sad gestures, indicating that some tried, but only she managed to get through the window. She drew small figures being pulled back inside the house. They're still there, Carlos murmured, clenching his fists. Dr. Amanda leaned forward. Lily, do you think you could recognize that house if we saw it from the outside? The girl hesitated, then nodded slowly, but her gestures indicated that she was afraid to approach the location again. You wouldn't need to go inside or get close, Dr. Carla reassured her. It would just be to confirm that it's the right place from a distance and with a lot of protection. It was then that Lily did something that surprised everyone. She got up, walked to Marina and whispered something in her mother's ear, the first words she had spoken since the reunion. Marina began to cry. She said, I want to help the other babies. The emotional impact of Lily's first words in months affected everyone present. Dr. Carla discreetly wiped away her own tears before continuing. Lily, you're very brave, she said. And yes, we can help the other children. But we need to find the house first. The girl returned to the drawing table and created the most detailed map she could remember. She showed the location of a nearby bakery, a gas station, and what appeared to be a shopping mall a few blocks away. That's enough to start, Dr. Amanda said, photographing all the drawings carefully. Our investigation team can use this information to identify the exact location. 3 days later, the call that everyone was waiting for arrived. Dr. Amanda had found the house. It corresponds exactly to Lily's drawings, she reported during a meeting at the hotel where the family was staying under police protection. Two-story house in downtown St. Louis, close to all the landmarks she drew. Are the children still there? Bethany asked. Our observers have confirmed suspicious movement, multiple adults entering and leaving, and we can occasionally see small figures in the upper windows. Dr. Amanda paused. We're planning a rescue operation for tonight. I want to be there, Arthur said immediately. Absolutely not. It's a specialized police operation. Civilians can't be present. Lily may need me, he insisted. If any of the children are traumatized like she was. Lily isn't going to be there, Dr. Amanda said firmly. She's already done her part. We're not going to expose her to more trauma. But Lily had overheard the conversation. She approached Dr. Amanda and made insistent gestures, pointing to herself and then in the direction where they knew the house was. She wants to go, Marina translated, her voice worried. She thinks she can help the other children not be scared. Impossible, Dr. Amanda replied. It's too dangerous. Lily continued gesturing, this time more urgently. She picked up a piece of paper and drew quickly. Scared children hiding from the adults who were coming to save them. She has a point, Doctor, Carla observed. Traumatized children may not understand that the police are there to help. They may hide, making the rescue difficult. Still, what if she stayed in the car at a safe distance, Arthur suggested, just in case we need someone who speaks their language? Dr. Amanda considered the proposal for several minutes. Minimum distance of 2 blocks. Engine running, ready to leave at any moment. And if there's any sign of danger, you leave immediately. Lily smiled and nodded vigorously. For the first time since she had escaped, she felt that she could do something active to help other children who were suffering as she had suffered. Then it's decided, Dr. Amanda said. Operation tomorrow night, and may God help us save all these children. That night, Lily slept more peacefully than she had slept in months. Finally, she felt that her terrible experience could have some positive meaning. She could help liberate other children from the same nightmare she had lived. The operation began at 10 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday. Arthur drove the car with Marina, Carlos, Bethany and Lily, maintaining a safe distance as agreed with Dr. Amanda. 2 blocks ahead, they could see the flashing lights of the police cars discreetly surrounding the house that Lily had identified. There it is, Lily whispered, her first voluntary words of the night, pointing to the 2-story building that had haunted her drawings for months. Through the police radio that Dr. Amanda had lent them, they followed the unfolding of the operation in real time. Team Alpha in position, came the first voice. Team Beta confirming perimeter secured. Authorization to begin operation, Dr. Amanda responded over the radio. Lily was tense in the back seat, holding tightly to her mother's hand with one hand and her doll with the other. Her eyes didn't leave the house, as if she could see through the walls and help the children inside just with her willpower. Invasion initiated, the radio crackled. In the following minutes, they heard muffled sounds of confrontation, shouts, doors being broken down, orders being given loudly. Lily flinched at each louder sound, but didn't ask to leave. First child located, came over the radio. Boy approximately 6 years old, very scared, hiding under a bed. Lily immediately made urgent gestures, clearly wanting to get out of the car. No, sweetie, Marina said firmly. Remember the deal. 2 more children found on the 2nd floor, both in shock, unresponsive to commands. It was then that Dr. Amanda came running towards the car. Lily, we need you, she said quickly. There's a little girl inside, about your age, who is hiding and doesn't want to come out. She only speaks with gestures like you. The police can't communicate with her. Lily looked at her parents, silently asking for permission. Carlos and Marina exchanged glances, torn between their protective instinct and the need to help another child. You stay with me the whole time, Dr. Amanda promised. Don't stray a single step. And if you get scared, we leave immediately. I'm going with her, Arthur said, getting out of the car. Me too, Bethany added. Marina kissed Lily's forehead. Go help the other little girl, my brave one. But be careful. The walk to the house was the longest of Lily's life. With each step, she recognized details that she had tried to forget: the iron gate, the barred windows, the front door that had already been broken down by the police. Inside the house, the scene was exactly as she had described in her drawings. Small rooms with multiple beds, toys scattered on the floor, and a smell of fear that seemed impregnated in the walls. She's over there, a police officer indicated, pointing to a half-open closet on the second floor. We know there's someone in there, but she won't come out and doesn't respond when we talk. Lily slowly approached the closet. Through the crack, she could see two large, scared eyes, a girl even smaller than her, with dark hair and dirty clothes. Lily knelt in front of the closet and began to make the same gestures that she had used when she asked Arthur for help at the supermarket, universal gestures of hunger, thirst, fear, and especially the desire to leave that place. The girl in the closet watched attentively, then responded with her own hesitant gestures. It was like watching two children conversing in a language that only they fully understood. What are they saying? Dr. Amanda asked softly. Lily is explaining that we're good people, Bethany translated, interpreting the gestures. She's saying that the police came to take her to a safe place, far away from the bad people. Slowly, the girl in the closet extended a small hand. Lily took it gently, and the two children hugged, two survivors recognizing each other. We did it, Doctor. Amanda murmured, emotional. But Lily wasn't finished. She made gestures to the other girl, clearly asking if there were more children hiding. The answer made everyone alert. She's saying there are two more children hiding in the basement, Bethany interpreted. Children who hid when they heard the noises of the raid. The search in the basement revealed two more children, little boys, maybe 3 and 5 years old, hidden behind a pile of old boxes. Again, it was Lily who managed to communicate with them, explaining through gestures that the uniformed adults were friends, not enemies. How many children in total? Arthur asked one of the police officers. 18 so far, ages between 3 and 9 years old, all in a state of severe trauma, but all alive. And the criminals? 7 arrested in the operation, 2 managed to escape, but we have full identification. They won't be on the run for long. Lily spent the next hour helping the other children understand that they were being rescued, not captured. Her calm presence and her gentle gestures did more for the traumatized children than any adult could have done. When they finally left the house, Lily was carrying the smallest girl she had found in the closet in her arms. The child had clung to her and refused to let go. She doesn't want Lily to leave, Marina observed. We're going to keep all the children in the same shelter temporarily, Dr. Amanda explained, until we can locate their families or find suitable homes for them. 3 weeks later, Lily was playing in the yard of the new house that Arthur had bought for the Santos family, a simple but cozy house in a small town in rural Missouri, far from any danger. The girl she had saved from the closet, who they found out was named Sophia, had been reunited with her maternal grandmother. 16 of the 18 rescued children had been reunited with their families. The remaining 2 were being cared for by foster families until a permanent solution could be found. Did they arrest all the bad people? Lily asked Arthur as they planted flowers in the garden. Her words came more easily now, especially when she felt completely safe. All of them, he confirmed. And they won't hurt any children ever again. And are the other kids happy now? They are, thanks to you. You were very brave, little warrior. Lily smiled, then ran to hug Marina, who was preparing lunch in the kitchen. Mommy, can I draw flowers now instead of the ugly house? You can draw anything you want, my love, Marina replied, kissing the top of her head. Flowers, birds, rainbows, our new family. Our new family, Lily repeated, liking the words. She looked out the window and waved to Bethany, who had chosen to live in the house next door to continue being a part of the life of the girl she had protected for so many months. Arthur watched the scene from the porch, feeling a peace that he hadn't experienced in years. His life had changed completely. He had sold part of his company to move to the countryside, had officially become Lily's legal guardian along with her biological parents, and had discovered that true wealth wasn't in business, but in genuine human connections. "Uncle Arthur," Lily called to him, using the affectionate title she had chosen for him. "Thank you for teaching me that not all adults are bad people. Thank you for teaching me that not all children are just responsibilities," he replied. "Some are teachers in disguise." That night, as she put Lily to sleep, Marina noticed something special. For the first time in over a year, her daughter was sleeping without hugging her doll protectively. Instead, the doll was carefully placed in a small chair beside the bed, as if it were a friend visiting, not an object of desperate security. "She finally feels completely safe," Carlos observed, watching his daughter sleep peacefully. Outside in the moonlit yard, the flowers that Lily had planted with Arthur began to sprout, small signs of new life growing in soil that had been carefully prepared with love, patience, and hope. The girl who once silently asked a stranger for help in a supermarket had not only found her own salvation, but had become the key to saving many other children. And in the process, she had created a non-conventional but deeply loving family, proving that sometimes the most beautiful endings grow from the darkest beginnings. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.